So what do I mean by that? Like they would come in day one and say, you, and you, tap them on the shoulder. You're gone. Get up. Get out of here. Go stand in the corner of the room. You're an observer. You can't say anything. It's like, wait a minute. That's the CFO you just tapped on the shoulder. You can't. Yeah, but he's in Germany. So he's not able to be here right now. So, and what about that guy? Well, yeah, that's my chief security officer. He's on vacation at Disney World. So we're going to let him, so we're going to put him down in the basement, and you can call him on the phone, but he can't be in the room here. He can't look at any of the stuff, going on. So, that happens a lot. So, try and, that's one way you can throw them a curve, or you can, something they're not expecting. Because inevitably, whatever you plan, whatever you're thinking, whenever you think you're ready, you're never ready, right? Because it's never exactly like I remember during the blackout of 03. People said, afterwards, I got interviewed by all these TV stations. Were you ready? Were you ready? And I'm like, well, we didn't have that exact scenario of like this blackout, but we did have a lot of the plans. We had just run a tabletop exercise. We had just gone through Y2K a few years earlier, and we had about 80% of it we were ready for. But 20% of it was different. 80% we were ready, and that was pretty good. So, but change it up. So throw curveballs, as we say in the U.S. That's another thing. I think you need to really, as you mentioned, another real tip is, a lot of times people get through the exercise and they want to just kind of like say, okay, I'm done. See you next year. See you next January, right? Taking action items, like you said, and then having people report back. It may not mean you have to have the entire team, reassemble for part 2, and that's great if you can. But it may be that you just have what we call, action items that people have to like report back on by email, or maybe the team comes back and says, we want everyone to do the, you assign who's responsible for those action items. You have to have a name next to the action items. These other people can participate. Bob, you can get together with, Sarah and Mary and Bill, but Bob is the person we're going to hold accountable, and we're going to look for you to come back and update our plan to include this scenario, that kind of a thing. So, making sure you do have actionable items, I think, is really important. I think one more thing I would mention is ask people for feedback at the end. I talked about the hot wash in my example a few minutes ago. Whether you call it a hot wash, whether you call it feedback, maybe you do it in a survey. We do this with customer service all the time and other types of things like that. What did you think was reasonable? What could we have done better next time? What, and you get some pretty sophisticated answers from some executives, around, it gets them thinking. It gets them thinking outside the box. It changes things up from their normal environment. I've even seen people say, and this is another little side tip, go to an offsite, go somewhere else, get people out of their normal environment. So, during an exercise, and sometimes the people are doing it all, this is hard with COVID because people are working from home, right? So, doing virtual exercises is really hard. But they would get people in the same room, and they would often do that as an offsite or get them to the emergency coordination center. If it's a tabletop, you may or may not be able to go to the actual place where you would be if it was a real emergency. You may, but you may not. But, getting people out of their normal environment so they're not like going back and checking their email all the time. Or, we had people who disrupted. They would pop in and pop out, pop in, pop out, and they were not really engaged. They weren't like freed up. Some people would say, turn your cell phone off. And you say, what a real emergency, wouldn't we be texting each other, whatever. But, if it's a tabletop exercise, the discussion, the comments are very important. And you want people to be focused. Just like if you go to someone, a friend or a spouse for dinner, you don't want them on the phone the whole time while you're having dinner with them, right? We all know that. That's not very polite, right? It's not very good etiquette. So you want people engaged, you want people participating, and you want them there. You don't want them kind of coming in, coming out the whole time.
Yeah, Dan, that's a great point that you mentioned. So I remember one of those, like learning from failure cases kind of stuff. So I mean that this is not something which I mean, not part of my usual stuff that we do. I mean, in my normal day-to-day stuff, we are into red teaming kind of stuff. But
Yeah.
in a few cases where I had been part of the advisory board, etc., I had done some of these exercises. So I recall one of the cases where some of the folks got into the room late, around half an hour late. So they missed the complete context and the setting.
Yeah.
And then during the session, we did this curveball where they wanted to kind of revive everything from the backup, and we said that the backup is encrypted.
Yep.
The cloud backup is encrypted, and that kind of created a lot of frustration. And these guys had a lot of challenges and issues to kind of cope up with this scenario, and that created a lot of confusion in the room. So I think what you mentioned is something very important, that people should be completely dedicated. They shouldn't be moving in and out, and they should have the context. They should join the meeting on time and stuff like that.
Sure.
Else an exercise like this can go in the can be a very futile one. And if a few people are not engaged and involved, that can actually kind of take away the seriousness of this exercise, right? So any other thing you want to add, Dan, in terms of any of these success factors, do's and don'ts, before we move
I
to the
mean,
next one?
I just would say one final thing, and that's, you want to be growing. The goal is to improve, and you're never going to be perfect. This is a journey. It's not like, some people come in and have observers. I know Homeland Security, they'll have people just sitting there taking notes, and they'll grade you. You can do that. I know they have reasons, did you do this? Did you accomplish? What were your goals? The team that's putting together the exercise certainly should have goals and outcomes that they're looking for. And, you can do that. I know Homeland Security does that a lot. They grade people, what worked, what didn't work.